it's sort of twofold, isn't it? It's the death of the album, and I love the album as a form, in the same way that I love the novel as a form, and it's not the same as reading an article in a magazine, but also it makes the consumption of music a passive experience.
Yeah.
And I love and have always been someone who's so passionate about it. I want to read, who engineered it, who played what, who did the drums on this track. I want to read the lyrics at the same time. I want it to be an immersive experience and something that's complete to a body of work. And Spotify isn't really set up for that.
No, not at all.
Still does that top tracks thing. I want to see I want the albums at the top. I don't want top tracks.
So anyway, official introduction. Catherine Anne Davies, it's an absolute pleasure to have you in today for one of our chats and talks. Also known as the Anchoress, also known as multi-instrumentalist, producer, engineer, songwriter, author, poet. I think that's pretty good.
Otherwise known as, you can't really make a living doing anything creative these days by just having one job.
Yeah.
So you have to do several things at once.
Yeah, I know it is funny. I was talking to our mutual friend John Dawkins, and he was talking about Tom Grennan. And Tom's lovely. He's done his first album. He's going really well, but he's saying he has to spend so much time being on social media. Being his own publicist, doing this, doing that, just because people can't just make records anymore.
But I quite like that. I guess that sort of I've naturally been doing that. And this is something I was talking to somebody about earlier today, actually. And I don't want to open that can of worms already about, being a woman making music. But it does shape the way that you approach the job, if you want to call it the vocation, right from the beginning anyway. And I think women are therefore much more likely to have their kind of finger in many pies and be much more in control of their career from the beginning because of that. And I do notice that you tend to see more women wearing more multiple hats.
Right.
And I think there are many factors at play in why that happens. But I think ultimately it's turned out to be a strength, certainly for me, and to be something that's kind of helped to sustain my career. And to kind of expand it in a way. And I feel very lucky that I would like to say it was strategic in any way and I planned it.
Yeah.
But it isn't. It's just happened that it's worked out really well for me, so that in kind of, downtime or down months, I can go off and consult for a management company on social media because, I've been doing this myself for so long that, I know it backwards, forwards and inside out. So I think in the past, people would have kind of looked at the idea that you don't do just music full time as a failure.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's just the reality of, the modern music industry. And I think it's beginning to shift people's perceptions about that. I'm not sure that fan bases have quite caught up with that yet. That idea that you don't live in a castle with a swimming pool and, be offsetting your tax in foreign countries. I don't think that all the fans have necessarily caught up with that idea yet, but I certainly think that amongst other musicians, it's much more of a kind of something we discuss openly now, is that, yes, I produce and co-write as well as have an artist project, as well as a session musician for other people. And that's considered to be really normal. Exhausting. But
it is exhausting. Yeah, I know. It is funny. I mean, as you said, gone are the days of like, oh yeah, I'm a bass player in a band. It's like, well, if that's U2 or Coldplay, then that's fine. But otherwise, you do have to have all the other extra things going on. And also, going back to your comment about being a female in the music industry, the rampant sexism that still pervades it. I mean, I was looking at some reviews of your stuff, and it's like, you would get the lazy journalistic things. It's always Lana Del Rey, Kate Bush. It's like, is that all you could think of? Okay, Kate Bush is amazing. Lana's really cool. So it's not like they picked terrible people to compare you with, but it's like, you wouldn't get that with a male artist. They wouldn't go, David Bowie, Lou Reed.
Yeah, well, it sounds so much more like Scott Walker. That would,
Yeah.
I'm waiting for that to happen. For someone to actually listen and be like, actually, this is what you're ripping off. This is actually what I'm ripping off, and they're all guys. But people don't hear that. To be honest, I don't read the reviews. I think that's the way. I remember Chrissy Hine said that to me. She said, if you sanity, she said, don't read the reviews. So I took that advice from her. And obviously, I see the little snippets that go up, on the website or on the press sheets, but I don't read them.
Good. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Ignore them.
But I'll take Kate Bush. I'll take that.
Yeah. I was lucky enough. I'm showing off horribly here, but it was through a friend of a friend knows Omar Hakim, her drummer. So when she did the run of dates at the, it's what's it called now, the Eventim Apollo, the run of dates in Hammersmith. Myself and a friend, we got invited to almost like the dress rehearsal show, which was 3 days before it went live. You weren't allowed to mention it on social media. You couldn't take your camera in, your phone in, anything like that. But we got to watch it. There was only about 1,000 of us in the venue, so you had all this space and to see the whole thing. And she stopped the second song halfway through because she'd made a mistake. So she said, she's like saying to the audience, do you mind if we do that again? I'm really sorry. And someone shouted out, I've been waiting 27 years. It's okay. She was so good.
I'm going to sound like one of those horrible people now and say I went 3 times.
Good.
I was lucky enough to get invited to the first night, but I actually bought tickets for 2 other nights through different friends that are in the fan club, and I got to see it from 3 different places in the auditorium. So I saw it first night, I was sort of front of the dress circle, and that was sort of, the guest area, and then I got to see it from the top of the the very back of the circle, like a really just different experience, very much kind of a mise-en-scène sort of full-on theatrical experience. And then I got to sit or rather stand in the stalls the final time I went, and everyone was dancing. So it felt like even though I saw the same show 3 times, it felt like a really different experience. Yeah. And I cried at different points each time I went as well. It was just amazing, not something I ever thought I would experience. And I haven't been on holiday for like 7 years, so I could kind of justify the cost of the tickets.
Yeah, it was. I mean, what I and my friend felt, it wasn't a concert and it wasn't theatre. It was something that just went across all your expectations. It included everything you wanted it to be, but loads of other extra stuff you'd never imagined. Particularly when the massive tree trunk smashed up the piano during cloud busting at the end. It's like,
well, I have to say, I was really worried in the first couple of songs. And I wonder if she is the master of doing this, kind of playing your expectations. And also she was kind of trolling us. She kind of came on and she was with the band, and I'm thinking, this feels like a Peter Gabriel concert. And that's fine, but I was not expecting that from her. And then obviously you got that big thunder crash, and suddenly the full-on stage kind of comes up through the floor. And I was like, oh my God, thank God I don't have to pretend that this was something fantastic and otherworldly when it was just... like 24 guys on the stage and her singing. So that was a real moment for me, because I was like, oh my God, what if it's crap and I have to say that it's good?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that moment when she started doing And Dream of Sheep, and you just thinking, is she going to do all of the Ninth Wave? Please, please, please. And it just unfolded, and you're like, oh my God, this is just the greatest thing ever.
Well, it's my favourite kind of, I don't know if you call my favourite side of a Kate Bush record. Well, I always talk about it. In fact, I bore people to death with going on about the Ninth Wave and how that's like my kind of blueprint of what a great record. In fact, I was talking to my friend who's a producer. In fact, I'm going to be like one of those horribly name-droppy people, but that's just reality. So I was talking to one of Bowie's producers yesterday about this. Literally, we were exchanging messages about how great Hounds of Love is. Just randomly in the middle of the day, both had been listening to it again and just talking about, that is the perfect record. She just nailed it completely. But she doesn't get the credit as a producer that she deserves. I mean, she produced everything from The Dreaming onwards on her own. Yeah. And we never talk about Kate Bush as a producer.
No.
Or producer. And yet here she is, having made some of the finest records that have ever been made, in my opinion, the most inventive, original, experimental, and we still talk about her as a singer.
Yeah, Oh, well, people still talk about the poster for Wuthering Heights. It's like, come on. You know, it is that sexism thing again, isn't it? Because, you know, David Bowie, if he'd produced The Hounds of Love, everyone would have gone, oh my God, not only is he an awesome songwriter and visionary and, you know, fashion icon, what a great producer as well. But
I think the interesting thing about Bowie as well is that he knew that you had to employ the best people for the job. So he's constantly farming out the jobs to other people. So he's getting in, you know, great guitarists, great drummers. Imagine if a woman did that, a female artist did that, and they would get reduced to just a singer.
yeah,
But yeah, he does it, and he's a great visionary. And that's part of it's part of your production choices too. You know, the session musicians that you get in to make a record. And it is interesting to look at those parallels between Bush and Bowie, I think, and the way they're kind of lauded. You know, I think unfortunately that there's a lot of kind of wistfulness about, you know, how beautiful Kate Bush was and great dancer she was, and everything is about her kind of appearance, and her quirkiness and her kookiness, that word that I hate. Yeah, and I think Bowie was a genius, but we don't focus so much on his kind of visual aesthetic, and he's an incredibly beautiful individual who really made that part of his identity as an artist as well, that kind of chameleonic quality. I think you put those two artists side by side, and you really, the way that we treat female and male artists very differently is glaringly apparent.
Yeah, it certainly is. Certainly is. So let's bring you to, well, pretty much right now. So coming out next month is your collaboration with Bernard Butler.
Finally,
yeah, because you were talking. You spoke very briefly about it when we had lunch 4 or 5 years ago, whenever it was.
Yeah, that's probably when we finished. That would have been around the time that we finished it. So all the songs are written for it and done by like 2015. And I think it's just one of those realities of the music industry. And people don't believe you. They think it's a story. But when I say no one was interested, I mean, it's not like we hawked it round or anything, but we played it to some people. We weren't particularly pushy. No one wanted to put it out. No. And you would think that people would be interested. You know, I'm really proud of the record. We both think it's a great record. But you know, that those are the realities of the music industry. Don't often get talked about, all those lost records that just kind of fall by the wayside because there's not the right kind of momentum behind it. And it was only because Pete Perfides, he's a music journalist and also radio broadcaster, he was running a record label called Need and Mythology that was set up to put out lost albums that had never had a vinyl release. I think Bernard kind of jokingly mentioned it to him as a lost album because it has kind of got lost. It was only when he said, you know, actually I'd really like to put this out. It doesn't fit with, you know, what we've done in the past because it's never been out, but it, you know, it qualifies as a lost album, and it's their first kind of original master that they've done. Yeah, it's coming out September 18th. Hotly followed by the second Anchoress record.
Oh, magic.
We haven't announced yet. Again, another album that was finished a good while ago that for various boring industry label reasons hasn't come out yet. And it's such a strange feeling to be sitting on this work that you're so proud of, and for it to be out of your control when it comes out in the world. It's a really odd feeling, but it happens, as you know, it happens all the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's not something that Daniel Ek from Spotify would appreciate on any level, because I presume he just thinks we've all got nothing to do. We all just go into the studio for a day and come out with an album and put it out for free. You know,
he'd be like, Catherine, you should have put that album out the day after it was mastered. And then you should have got back onto that hamster wheel and made another 14-track record in 80 days. And then kept going and occasionally pop your head out of the studio for some daylight, sod inspiration. And don't get me from that.
Sod any meaning to the music as well, you know. Just churn out some conveyor belt stuff. It's fine, because it doesn't really matter if anyone likes it. Just keep putting it on my platform, And enough people will integrate with it, and we'll get all this advertising revenue, and the major labels will buy shares in this company, which is worth $50 billion.
Well, it is quite depressing. I don't know if you've ever been in the kind of the back end of Spotify now, how you pitch a track and you have to kind of basically identify which instruments are in it. And it may as well be, I may as well just put sad piano bangers on everything that I want to put out, because that is the algorithm. So it will go on to, sad piano songs 2020, My Summer of Melancholy, songs to slit your wrist to. Not that I joke about things like that, but it does feel a bit like that. It's an algorithmic mood. And music is much more nuanced and complicated than that. I've made a record about death and grief and loss. But it's not a sad record.
Yeah.
What's Spotify going to do with that? What box are they going to put that in?
Yeah. It might break their program. So they're like, don't know where to put it. Maybe that's what we should all be doing, is making records that are completely contradictory. The lyrical...
Well, what happens is you just don't get on a playlist.
Yeah, exactly.
That's too complicated. It's too nuanced. It's weird, actually. I did a thread on Twitter yesterday about this, because I've been doing a bit of research about Spotify. Because the way I sort of feel about it is it's not going anywhere short term. Yes, we should all be kind of pushing to see it change for a fairer deal. But in the meantime, how do we kind of get the most out of it as musicians? And I did some really interesting digging around playlists. And, we've all got that friend or, some acquaintance that that's got on a playlist and has had, several million plays on a single track.
Yeah.
But what I then started looking at was how that didn't filter through to followers and regular listeners. So a lot of the artists that you look at, mentioning no names at all, and there were people that I knew, and they would have a couple of tracks that had a lot of plays. But these people were just fans of the playlist.
Right.
They weren't then going to explore the rest of the artist's catalogue and becoming a fan of the artist, and therefore following the artist, and therefore seeing the plays filter through. And one of the really interesting things to look at is to look at your follower ratio to your monthly listener ratio. And apparently anything above 10% is healthy. It's considered like an engaged fan base. And mine is 33% last time I looked. Wow. Which just means everyone that listens to me actually is a fan.
Actually likes it, yeah.
Everyone follows me. Whereas you will often look at these bands or artists that have got on one playlist and had one song, and the rest of their tracks, are not listened to on the same level, and they don't have huge monthly followers. So I think it's kind of a red herring to be thinking, I've really got to get on that playlist. I really need this track to be on, Discover Weekly. While it's nice, and I have been on Discover Weekly, I'm lucky, you're not necessarily going to see the follow through. So I think it's a mistake to become obsessed with cracking Spotify as being the answer. There were some figures this morning as well about it, talking about, I think it was even the top percentage of artists were only, and this was like the top 9% or something, were only earning $70,000 per year. And obviously then once you take into account the fact that the label usually takes an 80% split on that, you're walking away with less than minimum wage, and that's just for the top earning artists.
Wow.
So forget it.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Forget it. This is not going to be the way that you earn money.
No.
I don't have the solution, though. I'm not sure anybody does.
Well, no, not unless the only way it would happen if we all decided as artists, without our label's consent, because it's obviously written into the contract, so you'd have to renegotiate every contract, that we all said, no, we're not giving you any music because it's not going on Spotify. So that would mean everyone has to do it. And so eventually they'd run out of new music. But what they do is they just regurgitate everything that's already up there, put it in different playlists, label it slightly different. And obviously it's never going to happen because someone's going to break ranks and just go, or the record label, particularly if they're on a major, will go, well, you're in breach of contract, so we're going to sue you because it's in your contract. It has to go up on Spotify. So.
Yeah, I know there was an artist who I won't name, who was on my label, who wasn't on Spotify, and I don't know whether that was contractual or it was something that was agreed with the label. And then they made quite a big announcement. It was a big thing when they did eventually put the catalogue up on Spotify, and then they ended up swapping actually to a different label who were better at digital. So even they kind of changed their minds, I guess you could say, or realised that the label wasn't set up necessarily to make the most of that situation, and went over to a major. I don't know the answer. I really don't. And I feel as well as if it's terribly exhausting as an artist to have to think about it. It's like as if we haven't got enough on our plates.
Yeah. Yeah. And
we also have to become business strategists, do we, as well?
Yeah, as well as being, doing the promotion and actually coming up with the music in the first instance and getting it out of your head through collaborating with other people and realising some form that gets close to it so other people can listen to, which within itself is a huge undertaking.
Yeah, I enjoy that aspect. I think I would really not find it as challenging and as fulfilling and as rewarding if I was just writing and recording music. And that's just my personal preference, is that I enjoy the challenge of sort of like cracking the code, I guess, if you think of it like that, thinking about strategizing to some extent, but also putting together the entire package. I want to be right up front and involved in the artwork, the packaging decisions, the choices about, what bundles are happening, how we do the price points, how we don't rip off the fans, where we play the shows, and all of those considerations. But there is a line where my capacity is full and I cannot do any more. So I think it's just, in a way, this age was built for someone like me, because I do enjoy all of those aspects. But even I find that I'm coming to my capacity with it, and I feel quite burnt out by it all.
Yeah, and as you're feeling burnt out by it all, you've got 2 records coming out. just to throw more onto the bonfire.
Yes, and doing all of the promotional legwork around that. Even just logging into social media every single day and thinking about what am I going to post today, what's going to perform well. What's going to be interesting to the fans, what's not, doing the hard sell constantly while still knowing that I do have sales targets that we have about. It's quite stressful. And I don't think it's what I signed up to do, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's the reality. There's no getting away from it.
Yeah. So what was it about music that captured you? So if we go back to 8 years ago, even before then, why did you? I know I've asked this from everyone from engineers through to commercial songwriters and session players, artists, whatever. What was it that? Because it's a precarious world to live in, as we know. But obviously, you don't think about that when you're younger, because it is that sort of mixture of enthusiasm, love, and stupidity that we all carry around us. And we go, yeah, it'll be fine. I'm going to do that. So what captured you about it? Was there a feeling that you can remember?
Well, it's really. I'm a kind of odd one out in this regard, and I never really chose to do music. I wasn't one of these people that wanted to be in a band or wanted to be famous or wanted to. But I do remember being a kid, and my parents always played records. We weren't really allowed to watch TV, which was great in hindsight, not so great at the time. And I just remember being so moved by music and it being such a powerful thing. I remember sitting and crying to Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon & Garfunkel, and just being enormously drawn to this thing that had the capacity to make me feel all these really strong emotions. And I actually was obsessed with dance, and that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
I didn't think about doing music. And I think that's partly from being a girl too. You don't see necessarily that many people doing it or think it's something that you could do. And then I had a horrible accident and wasn't able to pursue a professional career in dance anymore. And I had always played music in a kind of dilettantish way. I played in orchestras when I was growing up. I taught myself to play guitar. And then I got to university and I started to teach myself to play the piano. And loads of people were sort of taking the piss out of me, just being like, you're 18. No one starts playing the piano at 18. And they were all like really good at it and they've got their like grade 8s and things like that. And I just kind of silently had been very interested in recording for a while. Recording was what I was into. And I didn't learn to drive, because my parents basically said to me, you can either have driving lessons, we can't afford to buy you anything else for your 18th birthday, or you can have a multi-track recorder. And I chose the multi-track and just sort of didn't tell anyone at all. And this is so strange. My boyfriend at the time, I wouldn't even sing in front of him.
Right.
I am not an extrovert person. I'm not your classic performer at all. He never heard me sing, and I just would work on these little songs in my kind of bedroom or my halls and not tell anyone I was doing it. And I don't know what I thought I was going to do with it. And then MySpace was a thing at the time, and I just put some demos up there, and I sent, I think, 4 CDs out, and I got a review in Metro, The Enemy, I think it was the Daily Mirror, Gavin Martin, the great music journalist, and I'm trying to think what the 4th one was. Ended up on the front of MySpace. Had my first gig, I had Simon from Belly Union there, from Drowned in Sound, and loads of music lawyers. And I was a bit like, everyone was like, who recorded your demos?
Me.
Me. And I sort of got a manager and kind of got a lawyer, and all this stuff was kind of happening really quickly, and everyone was like, you've got to drop out of uni. And I was like, absolutely no way. I was the first person in my family to go to university. My parents didn't even have A-levels, and there was no way I was going to drop out. And everyone was like, who do you want to produce a record? And I was like, me.
Yeah.
And that wasn't going to happen. No one was going to let me do that. And so I just kind of wanted to finish education, and ended up doing this kind of artist in residence thing at the South Bank Centre with Knit and Sawney, and just sort of thought that music would just be something I'd do alongside academia, which is what was paying my bills. So it was never programmatic for me. It just sort of happened. Everything that's happened has happened by accident, and it's happened on my own terms. And I just started making confessions in some studio downtime, and the rest is history. And there's nothing about my journey that ever resonates with a lot of the people that I meet, who are sort of like, I was in a band from this age and I was performing, and that's not me. I'm happier on my own. I'm happiest in my studio. And then obviously I joined Simple Minds and went around the world for 5 years, but we all do crazy things.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like sort of like, you like being on your own, you're not an extrovert, and then obviously then you just brought it up, and then then you're on stage playing these huge, touring the world in a massive rock band.
Yeah, well, my dad died, and I'd had a miscarriage, and these awful things had all happened in quick succession, and I just got this phone call saying, Jim has heard your stuff. I'd co-written some stuff for another project, and he had worked with his co-writer and heard what we'd done and liked what he heard, and it was all very kind of casual. And I was like, would you like to meet him and have a chat? He's got an idea he wants to put to you. And if I hadn't been through what I'd been through, and I hadn't been deep in grief, there's no way I would have said yes. I'm terrified of flying, I hate travelling, and I hate being away from home. But all of these things kind of coalesced together to make this perfect storm, where I ended up saying yes to the thing that was so out of character for me, but was a really incredible experience, and I just learned so much from doing it. But nothing about my career, if you want to call it that, has been a plan. It's just, and it's not that it's fallen in my lap. It's been a case of saying yes to other little things that have then led on to something else, which is always my advice to people. It's like, never kind of think an opportunity is too small or too unimportant for you, because you don't know who you're going to meet through that, who's going to hear what you've done through this.
Absolutely, yeah, totally.
And it was just through co-writing for like Paul Statham. He's a great writer. Paul. Who you probably know. He's written for Dido, Will Young, Rachel Stevens, all the great kind of pop writing, as well as Pete Murphy, Bauhaus. And he had this dark country project called The Dark Flowers, and had just sort of said to me, do you want to co-write some tracks for it? And that was how the Simple Minds thing happened, because Jim happened to sing on one of the songs that I'd co-written. So never say no to anything.
No. That's the advice, kids. I'm pointing to some of the side cameras here. Always say yes, as long as it's not illegal.
Yes, kids. Within reason, obviously.
Yeah. No, it's interesting you'd say that, because there's a producer guy I was talking to, and he also makes his own records, and he got asked to work with a guy called Breezy Lovejoy. And he listened to Breezy's music. I thought, I'd love to do it, but he'd just come off a really long project. He said, I just want to have a couple of weeks off. 2 years later, Breezy Lovejoy has changed his name to Anderson .Paak and signed to Dr. Dre. So can the guy I was talking to, will Anderson .Paak return his emails now? No. So it's one of those things, isn't it? It's like, ooh, I should have done that.
I mean, I have a similar story that I probably shouldn't say about, but there was a similar artist that I got asked to co-write for a couple of years ago, and I was just too busy with touring and everything else that I had going on, and I was engineering for another album, and I was like, I really would like to. I think she's got a great voice, but I haven't got time at the moment. Could we look at this in 6 months' time? And then goes on to win like the BBC Sounds Award, and don't think they're interested in working with me anymore. They don't need me. So that there's always the one that got away, isn't there?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, a friend of mine as well, another producer. Won't mention his name, though some people will probably know. He'd been in LA recording an album for a grunge band. And he's really missing home. He'd finished the record. He's like, I want to go home. A manager for a band called Nirvana gets in touch and said, we want you to produce our second album, which is obviously Nevermind. He's like, no, I don't fancy it. I'm going to go home. Ouch.
But I think when those things happen, and I'm quite philosophical about it, then it's not meant to be for you. It's like your path is something else.
Sliding doors.
I think we all think that success is the end goal, but it's not. It's to do interesting things. And the thing that you didn't do will lead to something else that you do that just might be much more creatively fulfilling. Okay, it may not sell as many records, you might not make as much money, but...
Yeah. Well, because he turned down Nirvana, he went on to produce the 2 Tin Machine albums instead.
I know which I'd rather do. Well, actually, I don't know which I'd rather do.
Yeah, I know. They're both both for different reasons are cool, but yeah.
It's just whichever one you find more creatively fulfilling, I think. And that's the problem with Spotify, isn't it?
Yeah.
That it turns music into a consumable product that's quantifiable in terms of how much money you're making, as in how many streams you have. And that it shouldn't be how we measure the success of music. It should be, are we pushing things forward? Are you doing something innovative and experimental? Is it creatively fulfilling? And I think ultimately it's less the problem with the money that I have with Spotify. It's the kind of creative narrowing that it's causing.
Well, it all becomes content as opposed to music, isn't it? I mean, it could be virtual baked beans that they're playlisting. That's all they care about. It's not, imagine Nick Drake integrating with that.
Well, it's sort of twofold, isn't it? It's the death of the album. And I love the album as a form, in the same way that I love the novel as a form, and it's not the same as reading an article in a magazine. But also, it makes the consumption of music a passive experience.
Yeah.
And I love and have always been someone who's so passionate about it. I want to read, who engineered it, who played what, who did the drums on this track. I want to read the lyrics at the same time. I want it to be an immersive experience and something that's complete to a body of work. And Spotify isn't really set up for that.
No, not at all. Not
So does that top tracks thing. I want to see I want the albums at the top. I don't want top tracks.
Yeah, I know. I'm the same. I want to know everything. From early doors when I got my first Echo and the Bunnymen album, I was like, produced by David Balfe and Bill Drummond. Who are they? I want to know who they are. I even knew that the artwork was shot by a guy called Bill Butt. Photography by Bill Butt. It's like recorded at Amazon Studios. I thought, I bet that's a mythical place. Can't wait to go there. But now, of course, people are just like, you'd get a song and then there's some more songs in that algorithm, that sort of genre, or the, sad piano ballads. Just like, for God's sake,
Or sad piano bangers.
No, that's brilliant. Sad piano bangers.
Because you've got to put the drum beat under it so it's syncable.
Of course, yeah.
Joking, obviously, because that would be horrific.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone's done it, but... and then I hear myself and I think, oh my God, do I just sound like somebody that's not willing to evolve and change? And maybe, people don't listen to albums anymore, but I just don't think that's true. I don't see that in the fans that are out there. I see people that still love and value physical products, who love, holding a great vinyl in their hands with beautiful artwork. And while it might not be the predominant cultural what's the word, fashion, there will always still be people that value the album, that want to know where it was recorded, who played what. And so I'm happy to play to that crowd. It's okay.
Yeah,
I'd rather...
Well, that crowd are keepers as well. As you said, your conversion rate is, if 10% is good on Spotify, yours is almost 34%. So that crowd, they're keepers.
Yeah, and I'm much more interested in the true fan. I mean, the band that I love and have just been obsessed with my whole life is Manic Street Preachers, and the quality of that kind of fan-to-band experience there, they changed my life. They sent me down to the library and changed my intellectual and cultural world. And that's not just listening to a band and liking the songs. And for me, I guess that's the experience that I'm always trying to think about, not replicating, because I don't think you can replicate that, but wanting to give that level of value to people that come into my world. God, that sounds really pretentious, but that is really what I'm... Sorry if that sounds horribly kind of... I'm trying to think of the right word, mawkish, but that is genuinely what I want to do. And I am very sincere about it. I'm sorry.
But that's why you have fans, because they buy into your world. It's like, you got the fans who are in Planet Manic, for want of a better word. And you were one, because they changed, they changed
I'm
it.
still there.
Still there. Well, I was talking to David Ehringer, who does all their records, and it was the same thing for him. He was a T-boy at some studio, and then he met them. And then when they did, I think they were making their second EP or something, they said, will you produce it? And then he got in, it's the same thing, isn't it? So,
I know Dave very well. He's mixed half of my new record.
Oh, fab. He's so nice. He's the sweariest man.
He's the nicest man in rock.
And the sweariest.
He really is. He's just so... And his son has directed my video. He has a very talented family.
Oh, wow, I didn't know
his
that.
son makes short films, and I saw one of his features, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to work with you on something? So yeah, keep it in the Manics family.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how did you... Because obviously you were a fan, and then you ended up working with them. So how did that come about?
I think Nikki had been playing Confessions, my album, on the tour bus, apparently, and they'd been playing out Long Year, the opening track from the album, before they went on stage, apparently. Someone literally sent me a voice note. They were watching them at some show, and were Long Year's playing on the PA.
Wicked.
And then someone did it the next night, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm on their pre-show playlist. Yeah. And I think, Nikki's a fairly avid reader of the music press, and obviously I can't open my mouth without talking about how much I love them as a band. I owe them everything. It's I really do. I still feel so much gratitude towards them for hauling me out of the life that I was born into. It scares me to think what my life would be like had I not heard the band. But and because I obviously always bang on about this, I think he kind of kept tabs on me, and then they asked me to come and support them at the Eden Project. I think that was in 2016, with the caveat that I would come on stage and sing Little Baby Nothing with them.
Cool.
Which was just, oh my goodness, I did actually jump up and down a little girl, screaming. And I'm, again, not ashamed of that, because I'm still and I came off stage after that and went straight down the front to watch their set.
Brilliant.
Band, and they've just been, just so supportive of me. Obviously, I played with them as special guest on their arena shows as well. And then, James and I have done a few bits and bobs that I think we won't talk about yet as well. They're just such lovely people, and obviously we're into the same kind of stuff as well. And I was in James's favourite band, so he's a massive Simple Minds fan. So the circle is complete.
Okay. Oh, it's funny, the serendipity of the whole thing, isn't it, really?
The first time I met James was actually at the Q Awards, when I just joined Simple Minds. And ironically, they were getting the Lifetime Achievement Award. And James, it was introduced to him at the end of the day, and he was like, oh, you're in my favourite band. And I was like, you're in my favourite band. And he was just so nice and just really down to earth. And I guess it kind of probably started from there, really. He's just, he's everything you would hope he would be. Yeah,
no, absolutely. So obviously you've got collaborations with James and playing with the Manics and obviously the Simple Minds, but you've done quite a lot of other ones, haven't you? From like Ed Harcourt through to Riz Ahmed, the actor, which is
I've co-written quite a lot for other people, which I don't think not everyone's aware of that kind of sort of side of my career too. I realised yesterday I probably need to be a bit better at self-promoting in that regard. I've engineered and produced a lot of records and tracks for other people and co-written for other artists as well for years. I just like to keep busy, really. I mean, the Riz Ahmed collab, that came out of my time in Knit and Thorny, and we both worked with him on a new song cycle to reopen the Royal Festival Hall way back when I was kind of starting out. And Riz and I just got on really well. He's very literary, cultured. We just kind of clicked, really, and he asked me to kind of come to the studio and do some stuff on guitar, and wrote Sour Times together. It's always kind of like a serendipitous moment and quite natural when I've sort of ended up writing for people, because I don't have a manager in that regard, a kind of producer, writer, manager, as they call it. So I've ended up doing all sorts of stuff. My most recent thing that I've done, I've kind of produced and co-written with Tally, who's in the band Estrons, and that's been really great. I do enjoy writing with women. I think there's just a certain kind of dynamic that you can have in the studio, and a certain freedom that you can give them equally. So we've made some lovely angry music that hopefully will come out next year at some point. Obviously, the COVID pandemic has kind of put paid to a lot of the momentum on so many projects I was kind of writing or producing on, because you can't, be in the studio, really.
Yeah.
It's super difficult. But I really love doing that. And I think, what I love about making my own records is then I'm translating that to working with other people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, that sort of, the whole collaboration thing is really interesting, because a lot of people are scared of it as well. Having their ideas get knocked down. When in reality, you're sort of collaborating with someone, the dogs are going to go mental. No, they haven't. Good.
That's at the front door.
And I've got a mini border collie and a bigger one, and they're both in the room next door. And when anyone knocks,
is that a wine delivery?
Probably is, actually. But a lot of people get scared about that, because they think if they put an idea in and the person they're the person they're working with doesn't like it, it's a failure. But so the whole co-writing and collaborating thing, it's just having a go, isn't it? Because there is no right idea, it's just a process of ideas.
And again, you can have your theories about how, being a different gender kind of changes that dynamic in the studio. Because obviously, traditionally, it tends to be male producers and male co-writers. And traditionally, the other artist will be male too. And then obviously that's evolved slightly. You get a lot more female artists, although statistically not as many as we think. But you're still putting them into that mix and that dynamic with an older male producer or male co-writer. So I think it's really interesting that we're seeing a lot more kind of female co-writers and female producers coming up.
Yeah.
Because you're disrupting that whole state dynamic that's been there
forever
throughout the history of rock and roll.
Yeah.
And I think you can produce something different. I'm not saying it's better, but it is different. And I definitely hear feedback from a lot of younger producers and writers that I mentor, saying about what a kind of different atmosphere that is for them, where they feel more confident and more at ease to try silly ideas and experiment with things without feeling embarrassed or like they might get shouted down. So, gender can play a part, I think, in a really positive way, rather than just sort of moaning about sexism. It's like, well, let's look at how we can kind of contribute in a more kind of proactive and optimistic way to shifting things. But equally, I say that on this second Anchoress album, I have completely abandoned all collaboration and produced and written the whole thing myself because I needed to do that. I needed that complete and total control and focus. And having done that, I think that's freed me up then to whatever happens next. I think I can then go back to being more collaborative again. But I think it's important to prove to yourself, but also to other people, that you don't need to rely on anybody else. So hopefully that'll be, I feel like it's, me really kind of laying out my stall and saying, this is what I can do alone, empowered, and, this is my box of tricks, and I own all, this is mine, I own it artistically. I think if you look back at Kate Bush and you look at The Dreaming, which is the first record that she did that on, and it's completely out of its box, and it's brilliant because of that. So, I think there's a real value in a way, refusing collaboration at a certain point in your career when it's right for you. So I go from one extreme to the other, really.
Yeah. Well, because there is no as you say, it's almost like when I said, what was it about music and why did you become a musician? And it wasn't like, oh, here's a narrative. This happened on this day. I heard this on the radio, and that's what I'm going to do. It's that whole sort of weaving path of sliding doors and all that stuff. And obviously it's that thing like, collaborate, I'm not going to collaborate on this. And I guess they all just lead on from each other, don't they? Whether you're making the second Anchoress album, it's like, because I've done all this collaboration, this one I need to be me. It's not like, oh, I've met, you didn't wake up in the morning and go, right, that's it. You can all fuck off, I'm doing it on my own.
Well, it's an evolution. It's exactly that. It was a natural evolution. I've learned so much from working in studios over the last 4 or 5 years that it's perfectly natural. It's not programmatic to suddenly tell everyone to fuck off. It's just, well, of course I was going to reach that point where I was going to want to step out on my own. Everyone would want to do that. It's really natural. That doesn't mean to say I won't come back to a different way of working again. It equally doesn't mean I won't just carry on like that, because I've really enjoyed it. And I guess it is like, it's similar narrative or non-narrative to how I chose to do music or didn't choose it. I just kind of go with the ebb and flow of it. I'm quite sort of reactive to what's happening at the time. I'm still not actually sure if I've chosen music as a career, to be honest.
I've just happened to do it.
Well, you're doing it on whatever day you're doing it. Next week I might be doing something else.
Yeah, true.
It's very possible none of us will have a job this time next year.
Oh God, I know, absolutely. It's strange. It's strange, and it's like all those god awful sort of driving gigs and all those sort of things. And it's like, I know people are trying to make things happen, and sort of online gigs and all that sort of stuff, and it's just like,
I have so far resisted the online streaming, but mostly because I think if you're going to do it, you've got to make sure the sound quality is excellent.
It's got to be awesome.
And so the visual aspects of it has got to be of a quality that if you're going to be charging people something similar to a ticket price, that you bring them an experience that's got that kind of value to it. I've actually seen some really lovely things happening in the past week where they've been filming them like in empty churches, and it does look stunning. And I think people have now got to the point where they're realising it's got to look great and it's got to sound great. But it's not ever going to replace going into a room of bodies, warm, sweaty bodies, is it?
No.
I don't have the answer. I mean, I'm a patron of Music Venues Trust, so I think the official party line is, obviously we want live music to happen as soon as it's safe for everyone to do so. But that is going to involve a lot of government subsidy in the meantime. Yeah. Because if we lose the grassroots venues, we're fucked.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we lose a talent pipeline. Yeah. We lose, the foundations where everyone kind of comes up through to eventually earn loads of money for other people. Yeah. So the industry should care about this. And it's about really hammering home that message. Yeah. But also thinking about practical solutions. What are we asking for? Therefore, we are asking for subsidy. We are asking for money to, keep these businesses afloat while they cannot operate in a financially profitable fashion. Because I think they did that gig the other week in London with Frank Turner as a kind of trial to show, I think, that it's not financially viable to make a loss.
Yeah, you can't, can you? Let's put on these shows which are expensive, but not enough people can come to make to break even and then make a profit. And so it's like, well, the whole thing is backwards, isn't it? Whereas the government would give £10 million subsidy to fishing, and I don't mean fishing as an industry. I mean fishing as a leisure time activity. It's like, do they not realise that the live music industry, well, the music industry in the UK is the third biggest profitable sector of the economy?
Yeah, it's something like 5 billion, isn't it?
It's crazy.
That generated. It is, and it is interesting. I think if we think about what we as a society value, and I think we look at art as something that's expendable.
Yes.
The arts, the entertainment, that's a luxury.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that's an essential. But what's everyone been doing during lockdown? They've been watching Netflix, listening to music, watching films.
Yeah, and it's all art.
So I think it's about a kind of attitude shift as well. I think for people recognising that the things that they consume require people to make them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm not sure that that's gone in yet, to be honest.
No. No, it's like, okay, you've got algorithms for everything, but the things that get put in the algorithms, they're all created by humans, and that's why humans react to them, because they're imperfect and creative. That's what people get drawn to. The crazy imperfections that spark something that captures your imagination.
And to make those things, you need the luxury of time, and you don't want financial pressure. It's impossible to innovate and be experimental if you're watching the clocks all the time, thinking this is costing me X amount of money per hour, or, I need to make sure I produce something that is definitely going to be successful. When you look at the history of the music industry, A&Rs take no risks in lean times. They sign things that they know will be successful, that are based on things that have previously been successful. All the great and exciting things that have happened because somebody took a risk on something that has never been done before.
Yeah.
But those cultural moments don't happen in lean times. That concerns me greatly. Also, what concerns me is what was already a fairly biased industry towards the upper middle classes, people with trust funds, people with financial safety nets. Someone like me wouldn't get a fucking look in now. I mean, I barely got a look in anyway. I had to work 4 jobs to make the first record. But do we want an industry that only produces work from the perspective of a certain class and background? I know I do.
No. Yeah, exactly.
And that's frightening, because I think there's a lot of impact that we need to think about beyond just when a gig's going to start again. It's like, well, how do we have a sustainable industry that still allows people from less well-off backgrounds to experiment, to have the time to develop, to be creative, to produce work that expresses an experience of a different subjectivity, a different background, a different way of growing up. And it's always been quite bad in that regard. Hence why I speak like this, because I change my accent to fit in. And isn't that awful? And I know I have enormous privilege, as a white person, and as someone who can pass as being middle class. And it's a lot worse for people who aren't able to pass in any of those roles. And it really worries me, because I think that the output of kind of British music will suffer hugely over the next 5 years. Again, what can we do about that? Put money into programs that are specifically targeting those people from backgrounds that are less likely to enter creative pathways in the first place. And I'm sorry if people find that offensive and they don't like tokenism or positive discrimination, but that is the only way that you are going to see meaningful change.
Oh, 100%. And it's fostering that position where people who would not be likely to enter that pathway, if you like, because it seems closed to them, and there's your time scale within it. You're not given time to, I should say, develop. It's to take away that element of fear, but it's not just for them; it's for their family. It's like, oh, you can't do that because that's shut for you. You can't go down that route. It's like the way universities used to be many years ago. It's like, oh, you can't go to university. You're from working class. You could never go to Oxbridge. And also working class, and you're not white. You'll never go. So if you take that as, well, this is making music for a living, it's like, it's trying to get rid of that. But of course, she said that then relies on the arts and music within it to be taken seriously.
I mean, I was, one of 2 people from state school at my uni, and it hugely impacted my enjoyment and experience of being there and the course, and also my confidence that I there. And as I say, as someone who can pass in that world to a certain extent, it was still horrific, to be called a chav and many other things. So I can only imagine how much worse it is for those that come from even more, diverse backgrounds and just think I don't belong here. I think it's changing for the better. But as I say, I think the impact of the COVID pandemic will trickle down and make it even worse, unfortunately, because when the money's not there, it's harder to kind of take a risk, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. As you said, it goes back to A&R taking risks. Well, there's no money. Let's not sign.
I feel thoroughly depressed now. I don't know about you.
Sorry. All the viewers are going to be like, oh, God. Do either of these two know any jokes? Right, let's flip it, okay? Let's put this on. Let's make this more positive, okay? Could you pick, and everyone I've said this to, they've had one or two responses. One is they've got immediate answers, but the more general response is, oh, for God's sake, why are you asking me this? I want you to pick 5 tracks that you've done that stand out for you for some reason. It could be
5 tracks that I've done.
Yeah. Okay. And then we'll put links to them as well so people can go straight to them.
Okay. Oh God, this is difficult because I'm terrible at blowing my own trumpet as well.
Oh, blow away, honestly.
I'm not. I'm rubbish at it. Probably Doesn't Kill You by the Anchoress is something I'm pretty proud of in terms of being able to have written and produced something for my debut album that drew on, my love of Berlin era David Bowie. I took a long, long time arranging this track. Really complex and broke my hand in the process. Literally broke my hand. That's not an exaggeration. Of playing the piano part on it, I detached my scaphoid ligament in my wrist here during the recording session. And right at the end of it, you can hear me crash down on the piano in frustration because I was in such pain, and kept that in the recording. So I'm pretty proud of that as a kind of record of what I went through to make the first album, both lyrically and musically. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Indeed.
You will. God, I'm trying to think here. It depends when this is going to go out, because obviously, there might be a track from the new album out by then.
This will be out in a couple of weeks.
Oh, maybe not then. In a couple of weeks then. Well, I guess there's a track that's coming out next week from the new collaborative album I made with Bernard Butler called Sabotage. Looks so easy. I think that's really kind of emblematic of the record that we made together, in that it's a kind of a meeting of our two kind of skill sets. Incredible guitar playing from Bernard and lots of black humour and one-liner kiss-offs from me being angry about toxic masculinity. I'm really proud that it's come out finally as well, because it's weird sitting on a record for so long and feeling so disappointed that you don't get to share it, because when we make music we want to share it usually. What was the question again? I'm trying to frame it in my mind.
Just the stuff you've made that just stands out for you for any reason.
There's a track that I engineered and co-produced on the Paul Draper solo record called Friends Make the Worst Enemies. I also co-wrote it as well. I feel like that is a real kind of showcase of what I do in the studio when I'm enabling another artist. And there's some real intricate vocal editing going on there that I spent a long time on as well. I'm really proud of that in terms of showcasing my skills in the studio. And not a lot of people know that about me, that I do that too. And that's my own fault, I think, partly for letting the narrative be what people expect a woman to do, which is how she sings. But I do many other things. And then there's probably, I'm going to pick something from another collaborative project as well, the Dark Flowers first record that I co-wrote a fair few numbers on. And there's a track called Aim for the Heart on there that I actually sing on as well. There's a real nice kind of dark country twist to it, something that I worked on with Paul Statham. He's a good friend of mine. And then probably Dylan and Caitlin, which is the duet that I did with the Manic Street Preachers on their last album. And that was quite surreal, because to be on a record that goes to number 2, we were kept off, as everyone was that year, by The Greatest Showman.
Oh, God, yeah.
It was one of the best-selling albums of the year, and that was just really surreal, you know, going around playing arenas with them was just, not that I hadn't played arenas already, but playing them with my favourite bands, that really special. It was a really crappy time for me personally in my life, and they really lifted me up through that, and literally held me together as lovely people as well as professionally. Is that 5?
That's 5. See, it was easy. It's easy, and now you're
too
laughing.
Much, you see, that's what it is.
We've gone from the depths of depression, and the music industry is ruined, and you know it's a horrible
virtual CV. Hire me to make your records.
Well, see, that's what you need to do on your CV. You need to put. We got singer and songwriter and all that. You want to put engineer, co-writer, right at the top.
Do you know what my
brackets,
manager used to say this to me? He would say, your Twitter bio needs to be producer, writer, PhD, and then whatever at the end. He's like, because people can hear that you're singing. They don't need to be told that.
True.
So I used to have this kind of made up bio. It was like producer, writer, exorcist, baker. So I just thought, if I'm gonna, I just felt so uncomfortable about it, and it's like, what makes us as women, and I hate going back to that again, so uncomfortable to do what most guys just wouldn't even second guess, would they? This is what I do. Why do I feel apologetic about it?
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, maybe it's that thing of being shouted down, or like, you can't be an engineer or a producer. That's what blokes do. That's a bloke's job.
You need a penis to operate a taper, I've been told.
Yeah, absolutely. How can you do?
I have a nail file. It does the same thing.
Yeah.
I actually do use it to operate my faders. I don't want to touch them.
So how on earth can you do a really complex vocal comp if you haven't got a dick? I mean, come on. Surely it affects your ears and your mind.
It was so interesting, actually, on one of the records that I was brought in to kind of engineer on, that I literally did end up doing so much of that complex kind of close detailed work. And not to make any kind of assumptions about, the different genders' kind of skill sets, but, women are pretty damn good at multitasking.
Yeah.
We make excellent producers because of that. We make excellent engineers because of that. You are often called on in a session to be thinking about the next thing you're going to be doing whilst doing and finishing off this particular edit over here, whilst thinking about what, the singer's going to need for the next thing you're doing. We're really well suited to it, actually. I think, and it is changing, to be optimistic about as well. As I said, I'm a part of the Music Producers Guild, and there's a lot of us now.
Yeah.
We've got 50% on the board now, that's in terms of a gender split. And there's so many great engineers and producers, not even coming up, who've already achieved so much. Catherine Marks, Steph Marziano, Olga Fitzroy. There's loads. It's like, in fact, I can name more women than I can men.
Good. Do you know what? I think that whole, the engineering thing being a man's world, it's like, it even goes back to ambulance driving. Women weren't supposed to...
My dad was an ambulance driver.
There you go. So it's a man's job. Of course, during World War II, all the men were away fighting, so women were allowed to drive ambulances and fire engines, okay, and doing a really good job. Oh, look, they can do it. Who knew? Duh. World War II finishes. Oh, no, you can't drive the ambulance anymore because it's a bloke's job.
Well, and I wonder if maybe the upside of the pandemic will be this, and I'm seeing it a lot, because women who make music are stuck at home on their own. They're having to acquire the skill sets to record themselves. And actually, I had a meeting earlier today about running something at Moloko Studios later this year and all through next year, where we're going to bring in women who make music. There's a couple of us producers who are also women, as I like to say, who are going to kind of lead sessions, familiarising women in the studio, making them feel really confident with terminology, just all the stuff that is quite intimidating when you're in a room full of men, so that hopefully things are going to shift. I do think the pandemic will have a positive outcome in that regard. It's like, you're stuck at home, you've got no one looking over your shoulder, you kind of got to get on with it. And we're going to have all these women coming out the other end with all these skills. It's going to be great.
Good.
They're going to be taking over.
Good.
Or at least doing it for themselves.
Yes, exactly.
Which has a knock-on effect, I think. And this is maybe the darker side that we haven't talked about, because it's not just tokenism. The reason why I think it's important that women are seen in these roles. There's a bigger reason why it's important, because unfortunately, a lot of the horrible stories that we hear about assault, harassment, etc., have come out of the fact that these are male-dominated rooms, that there is a power dynamic and a power imbalance in these rooms. So if you can shift that, I'm not saying remove it, we don't want to do away with men. I like men, they're great to work with. There are some brilliant, wonderful, encouraging people out there. But if we can remove the power imbalance, which is often what feeds these really either unhealthy, toxic, or actually criminal situations, eventually we will see the erasure of that horrible experience that unfortunately is all too common. And that's why it's, because I know there'll be a lot of people watching this thinking, why is she banging on about being a woman? Who cares? This is why we care. Because it's part of a bigger ecosystem that perpetuates certain things happening. Not to, bring the conversation down again, but that's why it's important.
Yeah, 100%.
Because that's why women leave the industry. That's why women give up on their careers. There's so many people that just think, you know what, it's too horrible, I don't want to do this. It's hard enough. God, is it hard enough without having to deal with other shit on top of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, the path, whichever route it takes, as you said, is hard enough anyway, particularly when you're making art and it's being treated by, going back to Spotify, but the music industry in general, apart from a few good people, as content. And then if you throw that on top, it's like, well, fuck it. Fuck it.
And I've heard it time and time again from women, I'm not doing music anymore. And they have horribly similar stories. And yes, okay, for a while that might mean we need some rooms full of women, but that's rooms full of women so that eventually, we get to a healthier place where we're not having to talk about gender anymore, because I do roll my eyes at myself sometimes and think, God, are we really having this conversation? But we have to have it for a while until it changes.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to Yolanda Charles, the bass player, and she was saying it took her, she's been a high-end session player now for, 30 years, 20 years, whatever it is. Said it was only the last few years where she gets hired as Yolanda Charles, the bass player, not Yolanda Charles, the female bass player.
Yeah, and I have friends who are bass players who hate being called female bass players, who are, highly respected professional session musicians in very big bands, who are, operating in that from a different place from me, where they don't want to be identified as female as such, because they feel like it reduces their role. And I agree with that to some extent. It's tricky. I don't have the answers by any means. Yeah. I just think we're all trying to work for a nicer place to work. That's a bit more inclusive, because then everyone makes more interesting art.
Exactly. If we can somehow eventually, or a slow process of removing a culture of being fearful to fail in your creative endeavours, that's when all the good ideas happen anyway.
Yep.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's a conveyor belt of pop music.
Yeah, and that's why, in a way, also, I think, despite, all the kind of negative things about streaming and the kind of evolutions of technology, the one good thing that I think is really great, and I came in on the back of this, is being able to record at home, removing those barriers to entry, as they call them, because not everyone can afford to go into a studio. And if all you need is a laptop and a microphone, wow, that lets many more people into the door in the first place.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that can only be a good thing.
Perfect. Good thing. Let's leave it there. Listen, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I'll do
Thank you for having me.
The official sort of Catherine Anne Davies. Thank you so much. Massive virtual round of applause and one from me. No, it's been fab. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been lovely to chat.